Welcome to the Master's Admissions webinar for Scientific Computing Master's Program at Penn Engineering, the University of Pennsylvania. My name is Christina Burton. I am the Director of Graduate Admissions here at Penn Engineering, and we welcome you. Today, we will review some information about the University of Pennsylvania as well as Penn Engineering in particular, and then we will specifically go into more detail about our Scientific Computing Master's Program. So because you are not able to join us in person, I figured I would give you a little bit of a glimpse of our campus. We are located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the United States. Philadelphia is the 6th largest city in the United States, so it has a lot to offer its residents. Right now, we are looking at the University of Pennsylvania campus, the Perlman Quad in Houston Hall. Here you also see Locust Walk, which is one of the major veins of our campus. Our campus is across about 3 acres in central Philadelphia. We are about 10 minutes away from Center City or downtown Philadelphia, so it's very easy to navigate the city via public transportation. So let me talk specifically about Penn Engineering. Penn Engineering is one of 12 professional schools at the University of Pennsylvania. As you can see here, we have about 17 master's programs. 2 of them are online master's programs, and we are proud of those. We have 6 doctoral programs, about 13 research centers for the School of Engineering, and you can see that our faculty to graduate student ratio allows students the opportunity to develop meaningful relationships and experiences working directly with our faculty. As you know, we are an Ivy League institution, and so we have a lot of money to focus our attention towards giving students a valuable academic and research experience. Here's a listing of all of our master's programs. I will, with a few notes. So you'll notice that 2 of the programs have asterisks next to them, the Computer and Information Technology Masters, as well as the Data Science Master's programs. Those programs have both on-campus master's offerings as well as online master's offerings. I will also note that the Integrated Product Design Master's Programs has 2 options, one for people who are particularly interested in design and do not have an engineering background, and then another track for Integrated Product Design for those who do have an engineering background. And of course, you are all here to learn specifically about our Scientific Computing Master's Program. I just wanted to show you a few photos of our campus, our beautiful campus. Again, we are in Center Philadelphia. We're actually in West Philadelphia, known as University City. And what we're looking at here is our engineering complex that is comprised of 4 different buildings. As you can see, we have a lot of beautiful green space and outdoor space for student gathering. You'll also see that we have some beautiful state-of-the-art research facilities that are utilized not only by our graduate students, but by local students, faculty, and even some government officials. What we're looking at right now is the Singh Center for Nanotechnology, which is located directly catty-corner to the main engineering complex. Also here, you'll see an aerial view of our campus, which is about a mile away from main campus. This is a research center known as Pennovation. So a lot of research for people who are in the fields of electrical, mechanical and systems and computer science conduct research out of this facility. So because I do represent the admissions department, I would be remiss if I didn't go over specific deadlines. So all of our master's programs have one final deadline of February 1, 2023. So if you are interested in matriculating into one of our master's programs for fall of 2023, you must submit your application by February 1, 2023. You will also note at the column on the left that there are 3 programs that have 2 deadlines, the first one being November 1st of 2022. Those are our largest programs that receive the most applications, so they're very competitive. What I will say is that the program you're here for, Scientific Computing, has a single deadline of February 1. So if you would like to get in contact with my team regarding admissions related questions, you can reach us in several different ways. So I will note here at the bottom right, you'll see you can submit an inquiry form. Our graduate applications are going to open this week on September 15th. But in the meantime, if you would like to stay in contact with us, meaning that you would like to receive updates on other recruitment events that we are hosting, you can submit an inquiry form in order to be kept informed of what's going on here. You can also decide to follow us. We have several social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And then you can speak with us directly, either going through our website. We do have a chat bot who can talk with you and help you to find the information you need regarding your program of interest, or you can speak directly with a person. For my team, Christine Rahal Asuna is the admissions operations manager who is managing applications for the scientific computing master's program. So you can find Christine's email address there. All right, so I am going to stop sharing, and I have the pleasure of having with us some representatives for the Scientific Computing Master's Program, specifically Dr. Sinno, who is the director of the program, and he will take over giving you a little bit more information about the program.
Thank you, Christina. I just wanted to confirm how we're doing this. Am I sharing my screen, or are you going to run the slides?
You may share your screen. I don't have your slides.
Oh, okay. I was under the impression that you did, but okay. So in that case, all right, I was not expecting to do that, but here we go. And then, so let me see if I can put this in presentation mode. Okay, there we go. Is that visible?
Yep, you're all good.
Okay, great. So welcome everybody. Thanks for being here and attending to learn a little bit more about the master's program in scientific computing. So as Christina said, my name is Talid Sinno. So I'm actually a faculty member in the Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering at the University of Pennsylvania. And I direct the program, so I was one of the founders of the program, and currently the program has two directors, or two co-directors, myself and Professor Paris Perdikaris, who is a faculty member in the Department of Mechanical Engineering and Applied Mechanics. So between the two of us, we are in charge essentially of advising all the students in the program, answering any curricular questions, guiding you for future employment opportunities, etc., or research opportunities. And we're basically your go-to people for kind of all things academic. And then the program also has the very helpful input from Ms. Katie Thompson, who's the program coordinator, and she's responsible for all the paperwork and the nitty-gritty and essentially the front point of the program in terms of guiding everybody for how to navigate the rather large domain that is the University of Pennsylvania and the School of Engineering. So with that said, what I thought I would do is give you a little bit of a, so I'm going to be pretty brief, but I'll give you kind of the key features of the program. So the goal of the master's program in scientific computing is kind of a compound one. It is really focused on having students who have interest in natural science and engineering, and who want to learn more about applying contemporary methods in machine learning and data science to some discipline in that. And this involves kind of learning a whole bunch of different tools. It involves knowing some math, it involves knowing some programming, it involves knowing something about algorithm development, It involves knowing a little bit about how to execute codes on high performance computing platforms. It involves data analysis, and it involves whatever in-discipline knowledge, whether that be chemistry or physics or mechanics or whatever the case may be, to which you're applying these kinds of methods. So this means that we're kind of at a crossroads between data science / artificial intelligence and traditional natural science and engineering research, okay, and coursework. So let me maybe I think the best way to kind of illuminate the facets of this program is to kind of go over our curriculum. And so this is a little bit of a busy slide, but it really tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the motivation and the idea behind the program. So you don't need to worry about specific courses here. And I don't know if you can see my mouse, but on the left side, we have a set of core requirements for the program. So all, I think this is a true statement, all master's programs that within the School of Engineering require that you take 10 courses, at least many of them do, and SCMP is no different. So our core requirements involve 1 or 2 courses in programming, a core 1 or 2 courses in math, a course from machine learning fundamentals, and a course in data science. And what typically happens is many students who enter the program have some prior computing or computer programming experience and will typically waive out of one of these courses. And if you don't, then you don't. It's not a formal requirement of the program, but obviously, if you have interest in computing, you typically will have some of this background. So these courses represent a total of 5 courses out of the 10. Okay, and these are pretty well defined tranches of courses from which you pick specific ones in order for you to satisfy these requirements. On the right-hand side, and in a set of bigger boxes, is kind of where it gets a little bit more free, but there is definitely a structure to this, to the way we've arranged this. So what you'll see is 3 boxes, and the inner box is kind of what we consider the core of scientific computing, which is really simulation methods. And when I say simulation methods here, we talk about simulation methods for how to investigate physical, chemical, biological, mechanical phenomena in nature. And this could be anything from molecular modeling to continuum modeling, certain kinds of applied machine learning courses. These are somewhat different than the fundamentals of machine learning. See, these are machine learning courses that are specifically applied to tackling modern problems in physics, chemistry, etc. There's a whole bunch of courses. Penn is very strong in offering lots of courses in bioinformatics and computational biology because we have a large representation in those areas. It also extends to things like vision and computer animation and things like that, because increasingly those kinds of tools are being used to analyze the very large data sets that come out of typical calculations in modern scientific computing. So as computers become more and more powerful, we're able to consider larger and more complex phenomena. And what that means is we have extremely large quantities of data. And sometimes the best way to do that is to make movies. The best way to see this data is to look at it in new and different ways. And so this is why we include this, even though it's traditionally under the purview of computer science. So you can see that there's both engineering courses in here and computer science courses in here. And the common theme in all of these courses is that they're very much focused on methodology for doing certain tasks related to scientific computing and related to studying problems in natural science and engineering. So the next box out is labeled applications in natural science and engineering. And as the text says, this is generally any course that specifically deals with a set of phenomena that is related to natural science and engineering. So it could be, for example, it could be a nonlinear dynamics course, for example, or it could be a course in astronomy. It could be a course in chemical reactor design. It could be a course in cell transport and gene expression. Anything that presents an application for that can be tackled with scientific computing is included in here. And ideally, these courses acknowledge that relationship and will have some emphasis on at least quantitative analysis of these phenomena, if not explicitly a computational part. Okay. And the reason I've drawn these in such a way is because, generally speaking, all of the courses that are classified as simulation courses will satisfy the application requirements. Okay, so if you take, and our requirements are that you take 2 courses from this box as a minimum. Now, if you take 4 courses from this box, you've already satisfied the 2 courses from this box. Okay, so it's meant to be kind of as flexible as possible. And this is the way that, given the very heterogeneous nature of the program, in which we're trying to make sure that you focus on applications in natural science and engineering, and I can discuss that some more as we go along. We wanted to increase the flexibility as much as we can in order to allow you to focus on a particular subtopic within this very broad realm. And then finally, this is the category everybody loves the most, just the free elective. So here, the only requirement is that the course is technical. And our motivation here is, rather than give you a complete free elective, we ask here that you think about what that additional course brings to your training that you're committing resources and time to working on. And the idea being that you choose a course such that you increase your depth in whatever it is that you're interested in doing. Okay, so that's the overview of the program. And one thing I want to re-emphasize is the fact that a lot of these, or I should say collectively, all of these courses kind of cover a lot of ground. So we want you to stay in touch with your engineering and or science roots, but we also want you to take these courses in methodology that allow you to tackle contemporary and modern problems on a computer, to study phenomena within this realm. What this does mean is that this differentiates the program quite significantly from a traditional machine learning or a data science type of program. What SCMP is not is a program that just caters to developing expertise in data science in an abstract sense, for example, or machine learning in an abstract sense, so that one goes and applies it to a focal area that's got nothing to do with science and engineering. Okay. Now, obviously, the way we define this is broad, and so there's a lot of gray zones, and this is what Dr. Perdikaris and myself are here for. We're here to help guide you to put together an exciting and useful program of study at this intersection between 2 traditionally quite disparate fields. Okay, and it is only now that a lot of these machine learning and data science tools are becoming very widely used in scientific research in science and engineering. And SCMP is one of the few programs that specifically caters to that intersection. And this is kind of something that we're proud of it. We recognize it's challenging, and at the same time, we want to make sure that as many people benefit from this as possible. So, which brings me to just what is the target audience of the program? So any undergraduate degree in an engineering discipline, whether it be mechanical, biological engineering, chemical engineering, systems engineering, or a basic science program, chemistry, biology, material science, physics, even applied math, is ideal. Okay, and the only requirement is that one, you're computationally inclined and you have an interest in exploring data science, machine learning, and scientific computing, obviously, to apply those to that discipline. You'll notice we didn't list in here computer science, and that's not to say that if you have a computer science undergraduate degree, you are discouraged from applying. But we do need to see a demonstration that you have an interest and some experience in applying these methods to a discipline within engineering and science. Okay, so if you've never taken a course beyond high school in physics, chemistry, math, biology, and your interest is in software development, this is probably not the program for you. Okay, and what you'll find is that you won't be happy here because you'll be required to take courses that you're not comfortable with or you're not interested in taking. And that's something we really want to avoid. So what we look for when people apply to SCMP is a demonstrated interest in retaining that in-discipline focus while learning about these techniques. Okay. As far as programming experience, again, because we're emphasizing the natural science and engineering part of this, along with machine learning and data science, yeah, it's very clear that having some programming experience will be helpful, but it's not an absolute requirement. We have a fair number of students who join the program who have fairly limited programming experience and then take fairly introductory programming courses. It's not a programming degree per se. That said, obviously, if you have an extensive amount of programming experience, that's going to give you additional flexibility because then you don't have to take basic courses in programming. Okay, so that's really all I'm going to say about that. This is just a kind of a very brief summary. I'm not a big fan of numbers like this in general because it kind of gives you the wrong idea. I'm going to be very transparent here, perhaps overly so, and tell you that when Dr. Perdikaris and myself are screening through applications, really these numbers are meant to serve as a red flag if there's something that's there that's unusual or much lower than what we typically see, then we'll factor it in. But otherwise, if there are two applications and one has a GRE quantitative number of like 168 and one has one of 170, this does not differentiate those two applications. We're much more inclined to look at your personal statement and look into your motivations for selecting to apply to our program, rather than worrying about minor differences in things like GRE scores and GPA. And GPA is another one of those things. You know, there's a huge range of how different institutions score different programs or score grades, and it becomes very difficult for us to kind of sort applications on this basis. So we don't do it. As I said, if there are numbers that look unusual for the program, then they will be a factor. Otherwise, they're not. Okay, and most of our focus is on your motivation in terms of why you're picking this program, as well as your prior coursework, what courses you took, and of course, if you had done prior research related to this, telling us about it is a great thing. And a letter from your research advisor telling us how wonderful you were is an even better thing. So those are the kinds of things that we really spend most of our time looking into, as opposed to screening through numbers. And this is, I'll admit this is a luxury of having a relatively small program that allows us to kind of delve into each student's profile to this level, as opposed to go by numbers. Okay. This is supposed to be just a sample. Okay, don't take this literally at all, but it's just to give you an idea of the diversity of students that we have here. So it's, on the one hand, we've got students with undergraduate degrees in biology and microelectronic science and ocean engineering and applied statistics and material science and chemistry. And so it's a very, very diverse group, but they all share a common goal. And so while they come in extremely diverse, they leave with a sense of a shared kind of focus. And this is something that we hope that will continue, because this is the goal of the program, is to introduce these tools into as many of these areas as possible. And a lot of seemingly very different areas use the same tools. People working on looking at how a protein is transferred through a membrane using molecular simulations are using the same kind of tools that I would use, for example, trying to study how atoms diffuse and rearrange in a semiconductor crystal. And these are the same. In fact, my own group, for example, and we encourage, I mentioned this because we encourage research. And I'll say a little bit more. I don't have a slide on this, but I should also point this out. So we work both on biological problems and on electronic material problems, because the toolkit is common. And this is really the goal of this program, is to give you that flexibility to work on a wide range of. So let me actually backtrack. I do realize I left one thing out here. In this application domain, these can be regular courses, or they can also be research experiences. Okay, so you're allowed to count up to 2 semester-long research experiences as application courses. And these are research experiences where you come in as an SCMP student and you take a couple of courses with different faculty, and you decide that you're interested in what one of these faculty members are doing. And here at Penn, we have a very research open and friendly environment, which basically means that all you have to do is generally contact that faculty member, say, I'm interested in doing an independent study. There's a course number that you would sign up for. And this is not just for SCMP, this is for all programs. And then you would put together a short proposal. You would submit that to myself, Dr. Perdikaris, who would then say, yes, this is within the scope of the program. And then you'd spend that semester working in that faculty member's laboratory, doing whatever it is that you may be doing. And some students have done this in the medical school, doing bioinformatics. Some students have done this in the chemistry department. Some students have done this in the computer science department, because some of the computer science faculty are doing very applied things. So, and if you decide you want to pursue a master's thesis, that's also an option. And I won't go into those details here because they apply to all other programs. Presumably this information's out there somewhere. It's not specific to SCMP, but we encourage all students to at least try doing some research, because one, it's fun, and two, it can be very rewarding from a development perspective. And just for example, again, just purely by coincidence, Dr. Perdikaris and myself work together sometimes on certain projects, and we've sent out emails to SCMP students and said, hey, is anybody interested in working on this project with us? And if someone is, then they just simply respond, and then they start an independent study. And we've had some very successful students within a semester or 5-6 months work on some very interesting problems. And so that's something that's really a big advantage. Then, okay, this Christina just mentioned, so I'm not going to say anything more about that. And I think I actually, I'll leave with this. So I've told you a lot about students who come in and what their qualifications are, and then there's the output part, which is where do students go? And this is even more diverse. And there's a reason for that. And that's because contrary to a lot of preconceived notions, many companies don't hire you because you took a course in XYZ. Companies hire you because you're smart, because you've demonstrated that you have an ability to solve complicated problems and take advanced coursework and be successful. And in a sense, we're doing the heavy lifting for some of these companies because we're admitting the best students out there. And so they can be lazy and be assured that they're already looking at a carefully selected pool of students. So because of that, the list of companies you see here is just a smattering. And some of them, like Raytheon, for example, are very much in kind of in discipline. They're working on technology problems. Others, like Amazon, may also be working on technology problems, even though Amazon isn't necessarily a natural science and engineering company. It's not. They work on a whole host of problems. In fact, they support computing infrastructure for doing a lot of the things that we cover in some of the coursework. And so they're very much involved in this. All of these companies have teams that work on very technology applied problems. And so students go and do internships at these companies, students go and work at these companies. And we're continuously trying to develop closer ties with technology companies who are looking to expand their portfolio in students who are engineers, but are very savvy in these methods as well. And that's something that is an ongoing effort. And sometimes this is done by our own former students who provide that link to such companies. So Christina, I had no idea how long I'm supposed to go on, but that's really the majority of my comments.
All right, great. Thank you, Dr. Sinno. So I will say I asked people to share questions in the chat. And if you allowed me, I can act as a moderator and pose some questions that I think are befitting you. Is that okay?
That would be outstanding.
Okay, great. So I would say the first question I saw is probably admissions related, so I can answer it. Someone asked if I could further explain why there are 2 deadlines for applications, for example, the data science program. So as I mentioned, the data science program is a pretty large program in that they receive thousands of applications each year. So for that reason, for ease of evaluating applicants and to make sure we are giving fair evaluation to everyone, we have split up the application decision deadline for the 2 dates, November 1 and then February 1. That is only for the data science master's program, as well as the master's programs in computer and information science and computer and information technology. The program you're here to learn about, the scientific computing master's program, has a single deadline of February 1, 2023. The next question I see is, can I apply to 2 graduate programs under Penn Engineering if I both interested in scientific computing and the other program? Great question. So I can take this one as well. You may apply to 2 programs, whatever programs are of interest to you, but I will emphasize that should you receive an offer of admittance to both programs, you will have to decide which program you're going to matriculate into. So there is opportunity once you are a Penn student to apply to double major, where you could take on 2 distinct master's programs. But when you are initially applying to Penn Engineering, you can only accept a single offer from 1 program. I hope that's helpful. Please also note that when you apply to multiple programs, you incur fees for each application you submit. The current application fee is $90 US. The next question is, could you share some more information about career paths of students in the scientific computing master's program? A few examples can be better. So Dr. Sinno, I'll give this one over to you. I know you have some companies, but could you give more information about career paths?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit, I'm trying to think of some examples. So, well, one obvious example is we've had more than 1 student who've decided to go on to a PhD program. Okay, so that's one career option. So they weren't actually, some of them were not intending to do that. They did some research. They decided they really liked it, and in my recollection, I don't recall off the top of my head whether they stayed at Penn, which can happen. There's a path for that to happen, or they went to another institution. So that's certainly one. We've had students go and literally work at software companies. That's where they ended up getting a position, and that's what they wanted to do. So I almost think individual examples are somewhat pointless in this regard, because there's really such a diversity of different paths. And I want to really emphasize, while our mission in the program is to have you, ideally, nothing makes me happier than you saying, oh, I got a position at, let's say, just throw it out there, Intel or Boeing or a technology company who's interested in furthering their kind of expertise in using these kinds of tools. Because that is precisely the mission of the program. That said, many times this doesn't happen. There's been multiple students who have gone to positions that are basically software engineering positions. It's just the way it worked out. And some of those students have found those connections doing internships, which again is not specific to SCMP, but rather just something that a lot of students do. So it really is, you know, I'll do this. If you really would like specific examples, please feel free to reach out, and I will forward your request to Katie, who will compile a couple of examples, specific examples, and we'll be happy to share that. I'm drawing a blank off the top of my head at this point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sinno. So another question is, we mentioned that it's very competitive. And so Thank you for showing us the slide about the average numbers for applicants who are admitted into the SEMP program. Could you speak again? I think some people might have missed this point. Could you speak again about the importance of standardized scores? Because I'm seeing several questions here about, okay, if I'm 1 point away from the average score that you shared, does that put me at a disadvantage? Or should I target to be at 4.0 average score for GRE writing? So could you speak a little bit more about these scores and how you're using them to assess applicants?
Okay, happy to do that. So if an application comes in, just to give you an example, and there's a GRE verbal score of 150 and a quantitative score of 165, and a GPA of 3.6, none of those numbers are going to have any bearing on the outcome of your application. We're just simply, I'm gonna note it, and I'm going to not think about it anymore. And the rest of the time that we devote to your application is going to be spent entirely on assessing whether you're a fit for the program or not. Okay, so think of it more of a threshold as opposed to a sorting criterion. Okay, so if I'm going to put that in an algorithmic kind of setting, obviously, if your GPA is 2.5, that's, I'm sure there are school-wide limits on application, on GPAs and applications, but that's a red flag. I'm not going to tell you that we are going to ignore that, but that's so far away from all the other scores that we see that it's a red flag. Whether you have a 3.7 or a 3.8 or a 3.83 or a 3.92, or that really doesn't come into play, because usually what ends up being a much bigger factor is that one of those applications or a subset of those applications is going to be a much better fit. And there's been many instances where I've prioritized multiple applications with lower scores over one with higher scores, just because they were better fits for the program, because that is by far a better indicator of how successful you'll be than just raw scores. And again, what courses you've taken make a huge difference, right? So if you have a 4.0 and all your coursework is in statistics, in pure statistics, you're clearly someone who wants to do statistics and possibly data science and you're not interested in applying it to any of the topics that our program is focused on, versus someone who's got a 3.8 and they've taken a bunch of courses in applied physics, and in their statement they said they've done research in astronomy, for example, just to throw something that's completely unrelated to my world, but yet is within the purview of the program, and you're interested in computational astronomy. That application will win over the other one every single time, with no question. That's not it's not even close. Okay, so these are just meant, everybody likes to throw numbers around. It's meant to give you a sense, yes, typically the average student that applies and is successful, yes, they have decent scores and they have a decent GPA, but really a 3.7 without telling me what the institution is and what the program of coursework is a meaningless number as far as I'm concerned. And this is particularly true of SCMP because it's such a multidisciplinary program, and we get students, just think about having so in my home department, for example, in chemical engineering, almost everybody who applies at the graduate level is a chemical engineer. So we only have to deal with a diversity in terms of institutions. but they're all studying the same thing. All the coursework looks very similar. And it's already difficult in that setting. And now here we've got not only institutional diversity, but we've also got curricular diversity. And so just think about how difficult it is to compare a 3.7 from a university in China versus a 3.7 from a university in the UK versus a 3.7 from a university in the United States, each of whom have taken completely different coursework. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. Maybe one of you can design a machine learning algorithm to help us with that. But as far as I know, that is just not a good way to screen for the top candidates. So we don't do it.
Thank you. And you know what, Troy, who's our colleague at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, he gave a recap of what you were saying, which is essentially that we evaluate applicants holistically. So we are not looking at specific numbers to determine yes or no, whether somebody should be admitted. So I think the comment that Troy added to the chat would be very helpful to our visitors. So thank you for that, Troy. Another question for you, Dr. Sinno, is regarding whether you would say the program is more theoretical or more based on application and practice. So I guess, is it research oriented or industry oriented?
I think that depends in large part to what kind of courses you take and your own interests. You can make it a prerequisite for a PhD, or you can make it very applied. So one of the really nice things about Penn is that it's Penn kind of looks like this. It looks like this box, right? So you've got, you can think of the inner box as SCMP, you can think of the next box as the School of Engineering and Applied Science, and then you can think of the outer box as the university, okay? And so you can, so in a sense, you're part of a pretty small community, but you're also part of a bigger community and part of a very big community. So there are, the plus side of this, there's an almost limitless number of things that you can end up doing and focusing on. And a lot of students take coursework that is very applied outside. And if you're really interested in doing something super applied, sometimes, although it sounds kind of paradoxical, going and working in someone's lab can be very applied, because you're then actually applying your knowledge to a very practical problem. Not all research is dealing with some esoteric academic thing that industry doesn't care about. In fact, these days, a lot of people pursue problems that are very industrially relevant for a variety of reasons, funding being one of them. And a lot of us are focused on applications in technology. People write patents, people work closely with companies. A lot of my students go and work at companies. And so in the end, and again, those companies aren't hiring the students because they learned XYZ, but because they're problem solvers. So whether your degree ends up being more on the applied side or more on the theoretical fundamental side depends entirely on your coursework. That said, some courses you have to take, okay? And in many cases in science and engineering, I should point out, there's no such thing as applied without having the fundamentals. You need those fundamentals in order to be able to work on something. So the fun stuff comes after you have a solid basis in the fundamentals. And that's just the way it is. There are shortcuts these days. Just to give you one example, it used to be that if you wanted to do a molecular simulation, you had to spend months writing codes and learning all about the mathematical and computer science and physical things that went into writing one of these codes. You needed to know how to differentiate or how to integrate ordinary differential equations, and you need to know how to debug codes and run compilers and all this stuff. And these days, you can run a molecular simulation code by downloading an open source piece of software and learn how to use it in a couple of days. This was unheard of 30 years ago. So things evolve. And so now you don't need to do all of that in order to start doing something. But if you don't understand the principles, you won't know how to use this sophisticated piece of machinery properly. And then the work that you do will not have the value that it should. So that's why you take all of this stuff so that you develop the fundamentals. So it's a balance between those two things.
Thank you for that. So we each, you and I have 2 more questions to answer, which I think will put us at 10:30. So thanks for the great questions. So the last 2 questions that I have to answer, someone asked about whether this is an online program. So the scientific master's program is strictly an on-campus program. You cannot take courses remotely. You have to be present in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to participate in the program. And then also there was some confusion about why SEMP is referred to as an MSc program. And that's because when you graduate from the Scientific Computing Master's program, you will have earned a master's in Science of Engineering. So that's what MSc stands for in regards to SEMP. So we have 2 questions for you, Dr. Sinno, and then we will end the session. So the first one is talking a little bit more about those who apply or are interested in your program who have a computer science background. So the question is, does this program favor or not computer science background students? And I know you spoke to that briefly, but maybe if you could, you know, address that, maybe this person missed when you were discussing that. I think that's the last question.
I will just say this. So if you have an undergraduate degree in computer science and you've not taken any courses beyond, let's say, your first year of basic physics and chemistry, or whatever the requirements are at your institutions, empirically, and I say empirically because this is just, you know, there's no hard and fast rules here, right? We found that this is not the best fit for you. And the reason for that is because a lot of the courses, so for example, if you look at this chart again, you look at all of these kinds of courses, simulation methods, many of these require some background in more advanced physics, in more advanced mechanics, whatever the case may be. So we're looking for background. Now, if you have a computer science degree, but you've always had an interest in applying computer science to natural science and engineering, and you've taken more advanced coursework in, let's say, computer simulation methods like molecular modeling or finite element methods or whatever the case may be, that demonstrates to us that, yes, you have an interest in these things. And then doesn't matter what your degree's in. Okay, so when there's a question in terms of fit, this is where we'll do a deep dive on the individual courses that you've taken. But if you come to the program, and you know, we see students who clearly haven't read the mission of the program carefully, and they have an undergraduate degree in economics, for example. There is no overlap there. Okay, and they're really interested in doing data science in economics, econometrics, whatever the case may be. Quantitative economics, a very fascinating area. I read a lot of articles in that just out of curiosity. And actually some of the tools are similar. There's a lot of statistical and simulation. Monte Carlo methods, for example, are used just as much in economics as they are in chemical engineering. But the point is, you won't be with an economics undergraduate degree, you're not going to be able to take any of these courses because you don't have the background for them, and you're going to be unhappy in the program. And it doesn't matter if you have a 4.0, and it doesn't matter if you have a 170 on your quantitative GRE, you'll still be unhappy. And what's going to happen, because it has happened in the past, is that you're going to be a brilliant student who's going to want to transfer out of the program. And that's not good for you, and it's not good for us, because it creates tension, and it's just a mismatch. So it's not an indictment of your abilities, it's just we're telling you that this is not the right program for you. We might even suggest that you apply somewhere to a different program, like the data science program or an economics program for that matter. Okay, so this is where your undergraduate degree, and we understand different institutions call their degrees different things. So there are students who have a computer science degree who've taken a lot of applied computer science that is very relevant to the kinds of things we're interested in. And that's completely fine. Okay, so it's not an either or it's not an automatic disqualification, but we do have a requirement that you have to demonstrate. And I would give you this, the last thing I will say, as free advice to any program you apply to, SCMP or otherwise. One of the best things you can do in your personal statement is provide some motivation, specific motivation as to why you're applying to that particular program. Okay, there's nothing more pleasing to an admissions officer than seeing somebody who's done their homework and spent a few minutes thinking about how they would fit in and why they're applying to that particular program. Makes a huge difference. And when I see something like that, and you have the coursework to back it up, of course, making claims that while you did economics at undergrad, you're really interested in astrophysics is not very believable. But in general, when you make a verifiable claim and you show that you have a specific fit to a program, it can make up for a lot of other things. GPA becomes much less important. Quantitative GRE scores become less important. Okay, it really is about program fit. And sometimes it takes both you and the admissions person to figure out what that fit is, what the best fit is. And so you might not see it, but we've looked at so many applications, it's might be easier for us to see it. And once in a while, someone will apply to a different program and they might not have been a fit there, and they'll be referred to us. And we'll say, oh, that's a great fit. And we'll reach out to the student and say, apply here. We'll transfer your application over because you should have applied here because you fit in great with our program. And the student might not have been aware of the program. And so that happens. It really is the most important thing. All right, with that, I think I'll stop rambling.
No, that was really helpful. Thank you. I would like to thank everyone who is here in attendance. Thank you for your interest in the Scientific Computing Master's Program, as well as your interest in Penn Engineering at the University of Pennsylvania. My name is Christina Burton. If you have further questions, I have provided contact information in the chat for Catherine Thomas. She is the coordinator for the Scientific Computing Master's Program. I've also included contact information for one of my teammates, Christine, who can provide additional support regarding submitting your application for the SCMP program. Thanks again for being here. This session was recorded, so I will share it with Troy. Special thanks to Troy for helping to organize this. Thank you all and take care.
Thank you. Take care.